I'm just going to give you a very quick overview because obviously my job has changed since COVID, as everybody else's has. Normally I would be going out and visiting, going to schools, seeing how everybody's doing. And now I'm at home doing a lot of these webinars and conference calls, but also listening to what you guys and caterers have got to say, because you know, there's a lot of you that is struggling. You are struggling, and it's hard. It's very hard, and especially when you're on your own. So the webinars that I've been doing, we've had, for instance, I do a lot of policy work now, which sometimes can be quite boring, believe you me. So last week we had an a School Food Plan Alliance meeting, and this was with various speakers. So we had Stephen Forster, who is the LASA chair, and he was talking about the service, the catering service, and what it's going to be like post-COVID. We also spoke about the School Food Plan Alliance checklist, which I hope you've all got. And if not, you can download it, I'm sure, from the Food for Life website. Claire will tell me if we can't. We also heard from James Bilby, who is the CEO of the Federation of Wholesalers. And that was really interesting because it has hit the industry by 80%, which is huge. The actual retail sector has gone up by 24%, but the hospitality has gone down by 80%. And there are a lot of chefs out there who haven't got a job, basically. But, for instance, I've just been on a phone call this morning talking to Naomi Duncan, who is the CEO of Chefs in Schools. And she's been telling me that a lot of the chefs there who are around London have actually been volunteering for them, which is really, really good. But the interesting thing is that what she told me this morning was these chefs have been absolutely bowled over by what you guys do every day of the week and what your menu is, what it consists of, but how much you can spend. They really, really couldn't believe how much you're allowed. So that was, as I say, very interesting. Lee Powell, who works for Unison, one of the I can't remember what they are now, unions, sorry. She spoke about the survey that they've done and what's the impact's been on COVID-19 since COVID-19, and again that was very, very interesting. And then we had Tim Baker, who's a head teacher at Charlton Manor, and he spoke about what's it like now being back on partial return. And within that, we get a guy called Andy Hudson. He comes from the Department of Education, and he listens, we hope, but he does listen, and he will take back questions to the DofE. As I say, I'm talking to a lot of caterers who I say are struggling at the moment, trying to reassure and trying to advise where possible. And basically that is what I'm doing at the moment. And I just have to say, if I don't get a chance, I just think you're doing a fantastic, fantastic job. Thank you. There's so many children and parents who are so grateful for what you guys are doing. So, as I say, thank you very much. And back to Claire.
Thanks, Jeanette. That's really interesting to hear. It's quite exciting to have that feedback from Naomi at Chefs in Schools on how impressed all the chefs have been with what the school chefs and cooks are doing. So it's quite nice to hear something positive coming out of this. Sam, can I hand over to you? Might need some technical support from you, Taylor. There we go.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Oh, lovely. Right. So I was just asked to just briefly outline a few things. So what my current offer is, the processes and procedures I went through, and any challenges I've had, just to share my story about what I'm doing at the moment, and hopefully can offer any support, you know, and we can chat through things as needed. My current offer at the moment across all of our schools is a takeaway model. So we're doing like you know, literally, it's a simplified menu. It's on a 2-week rotation, and there's still quite a bit of choice, but it's the choices available are fixed options for like fillings and toppings. So we do a hot lunch option, a vegetarian option, a jacket potato with a fixed topping for that day, and a packed lunch with a fixed filling for that day. So we still have variety, and we still have choice, and we're still able to do a hot lunch, which is, you know, what my main priority was, because I've done over 600 food parcels a week for the last 10 weeks, and most of our children have been living off of sandwiches and cold packed lunches. So for me, my priority was to get a hot lunch into our children that were coming on site. And today, out of 50 children on site, we've done 46 lunches, hot lunches. So I'm really pleased about that. All of our families pre-order, so that's really helpful. It helps me with my stock control in the kitchen to reduce any waste. It also helped me with using up what I've got in my freezers, because obviously that was, you know, as an in-house caterer, that was a huge issue for me, because obviously we were shut down at a flick of a switch. Everything that we cook goes into disposable takeaway boxes that are recyclable. We have disposable cutlery, and then we pack it all up. We open the shutters at stagger collection times. The hot boxes then are delivered to the children in their bubbles. So the kitchen is probably the safest on-site role, because we don't have any contact with the children, which was really important for me at this time, because I've got a lot of, or a few, vulnerable adults in some of our kitchens that had health conditions that I was, you know, for me, I was quite worried about them. And we did a risk assessment right at the beginning, and the GPs had said that they were only allowed back on site if it was the safest on-site role. So therefore, I made sure that all of our kitchens was the safest on-site role. And the procedures are, you know, it went quite quickly. The procedures I went through to be able to deliver that service is, there was a lot of planning, obviously. I initially sent out staff risk assessments so I could understand who was a bit more vulnerable, who could come in. We worked out the numbers that were going to be on site and the capacity we had. I had to look at, before I did the menu, what stock was in our freezers so I could use that up. I also was able to run the same menu across all of our schools locally, so that I could buy in pallets of fish fingers or meatballs or whatever it was, so that would keep my costs down as well. So I worked really hard with suppliers on that. I looked at the government guidance, food standards agency guidance, and health and safety guidance to be able to put my own personal guidance in place for the whole of the trust, which was really quite helpful. There was some really good pointers in every part, actually, about how to, you know, change to a takeaway model, mainly around labelling. So we had, that was one of the big issues, about making sure any allergy children got the correct menu, got the correct item, because normally in a kitchen I know exactly a gluten-free child and we've got procedures in place, but it was changing that up a bit. Parent communication and reassurance to our parents was also really, really important, and we wanted to sell it as like a fun picnic style that the children could take, take their takeaway boxes and go and sit in the school grounds if it was nice, so that parents felt quite reassured about the processes we put in place, but also that it wasn't going to be too sterile. I think they were worried. We spent so many years trying to create a lovely dining environment and family friendly and restaurant with tablecloths and everyone sitting and socialising together, and then suddenly to strip that back, it was quite hard and quite sad for me to get my head around. But so we sold it as a real fun picnic style, and I think a lot of parents bought into that. Then the next phase was obviously kitchen remobilisation, which was quite a headache, making sure all the audits and checklists were in place, all the risk assessments, PPE, signage, the delivery system was in place, to make sure that that was safe. The HACCP, I had to change that and send it into my environmental health officer. Labelling, allergies, that was one of my main concerns. Staff training, so that they felt secure and happy about the environment they were working in. And then in the enhanced cleaning, making sure that the touch points were all cleaned regularly, and that, that they thought about things that they wouldn't necessarily, like light switches and maybe gas proving buttons. And, because in a kitchen you work as a team, and if I put something in the oven and the alarm's gone off and someone else takes it out, how many contact times have you all touched that handle to get things in and out? And so it was really getting everybody to think about their behaviour a little bit in the environment. So that's a bit of a whirlwind tour of what's happened. But challenges to date, I think ensuring that nutritional standards, that we were compliant across the week, which is why I didn't narrow my menu too much. Obviously, I'm still having 3 different types of veg, a different variety of vegetables, protein, starch across the week. So I'm still broadly compliant. I think the trickiest thing was probably getting the 50% fruit puddings in, because I needed something that was easy to eat for the children, and that if they were outside, it wouldn't fall all over the place. So I did more tray bakes, fruit-based tray bakes, fruit-loaded jellies. We've done little mini fruit pots. So we've sort of tried to, get as much fruit in as we can still, because obviously that's important. Staff members going off, if they've got symptoms. Touch wood, that hasn't happened to me yet. Everybody, I think, because they felt so reassured that it was the safest on-site role, have actually been, we've had a full team, full staffing. So I'm really, happy about that. Everything, to be fair, at the moment, touch wood, has gone quite smoothly. So, I think that's a whirlwind tour, but of what we were up to. But I think that sort of gives you an overview of where we've come to, really.
Great, thank you, Sam. That's really interesting to hear. Oh, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if there was any questions, that's fine. But that's about us in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting to hear about your parent communications as well, and making it, a fun experience rather than that sort of sterile, dreaded lunch service. It's actually something that can really be enjoyed and embraced by parents and pupils alike. It's quite encouraging, really. Just so if anyone listening in, we've not had any slides so far, so don't worry, you've not missed anything in case you're expecting slides. And so now I'm going to hand over to Tony Mulgrew.
Are you able to see me?
Yeah, we can see and hear you, I think.
That is super. I've got a great IT manager working in the background from school. I'm actually at today. So I'm the catering manager at Ravenscliffe High School, and we have been catering for 2 primary schools, one of them being transported, a 6th form unit plus a cafe that's open to the public. And as you can appreciate, everything closed down 12 weeks ago. So we lost an awful lot of revenue from the cafe side of it. All the students were in lockdown, apart from all our vulnerable students, with us being a SEN school. We had an awful lot of communication with parents and all pastoral groups, so that we knew from day one what parents needed help and support, whether it be online learning or actually respite, having students come in. From day one, we have worked in bubbles. So in a classroom, we might have a maximum of 4 students and 2 or 3 staff, depending on the needs of our students. The menu itself, we have kept it as it is for this time of the year. We have reduced slightly, but we still offer our vegan, vegetarian choice and a meat choice every day, with a selection of puddings. We decided to offer hot meals because we could control it better. And like Sam, we still had to acknowledge all the hazard and make sure that all the risk assessments were put in place, not only for ourselves, but for staff, and to support and reassure parents that we were doing everything possible that to make the environment safe, but at the same time that it didn't have a detrimental effect on our actual students, because as you can imagine, some of our students with severe autism, it's all about routine. And to suddenly put a student into an environment that he hasn't got that routine, or he or she hasn't got that routine, can be quite stressful. So we've tried to keep everything as normal as possible. The most important thing to us was making sure that every student had a hot meal on a daily basis. At the same time, those students that were more vulnerable and couldn't come into school, we supported them with food parcels. Not as many as Sam, thank God, but we did work closely with our local supermarket in providing food parcels at a very high standard, making sure there was plenty of fresh ingredients in those, and also that they met all our guidelines around food allergens, because we do have roughly about 18 special diets. And like Sam, it was very important that we cover those areas just for the safety of our students. At this present moment, we are looking at roughly 40 students in the main school. We're opening up the sixth form unit as from next week, and we'll possibly have 15 students plus staff in each site. And one of the primaries has gone on to pack lunches, but based in their own school. And the other primary, they are doing packed lunches as well, and their numbers have gone up, but it's based in their own school, so there's no transported meals at this present moment, which in hindsight, I would have loved to have been able to offer hot meals to all locations, but it was just too risky. So I was left with the option of making sure that students still had a good, substantial meal, making sure that we tried to keep within all the guidelines and the safety risk assessments for each location. So that's what we're doing at this present moment. We hope to carry on doing that until the end of term. Come September, our numbers, we hope, are going to increase, and we still hope to be offering a hot meal service throughout all locations. As I said earlier, it's very important to me that we offer that fresh hot meal option rather than packed meals, but in some cases you don't have the opportunity to do this. So it's understandable why some people would go along there. Staffing wise, we've 7 staff over all the sites, and yet again, it was reassuring them that it was safe to work in hubs. We've reduced their actual working hours so that they feel comfortable working in a buddy system. So, such as today, 2 of my staff are in working just by themselves, and they will do the next 2 days. And then Monday and Tuesday, another 2 will come in. And the following week, I go in by myself. And that's how we've been rotating it week on, week off. There's the opportunity for staff to wear PPE if they wish to wear it. And they've been given a full risk assessment. And as Sam mentioned, all these risk assessments have to be approved by local authority and the EHO. So we're comfortable in saying that we have done everything that is required of us, and everyone at this present moment seems quite happy and supportive, and we just take one day at a time and 1 week at a time. So that's how we're working at this present moment. So that's about it.
That's great. Thank you, Tony. Really interesting to hear about balancing 18 special diets. And it also really fascinating to hear how you're working in hubs as well for the staff. I think a lot of people could probably take a lot from that. So we can move on. We've got quite a few questions to get through. So I'll just sort of go through them, and I'll try and sort of direct them to who I think might be the best to sort of answer them. And a couple of them I might ask both Tony and Sam to share sort of what their thoughts are around the solutions. So first question I'll put to both Tony and Sam, and you both touched on it slightly, but how are you both managing to comply with nutritional standards while serving packed lunches as a meal option? So I'll put that to Tony first.
As I said, our packed meal option is based within the primary schools, and one of the things that I've asked for each school to do is to make sure that we offer plenty of fruit, plenty of veg options, salad options, but the salads have to be all individual so that no one's actually touching them or handling tongs, etc. So that's a little bit time consuming, but of course our school has tried over the years to be a recyclable, sustainable school, and with the impact of COVID, our plastic has gone up. And of course, that's the bad side of it, to make sure that everyone's having individual items and that no one's handling anything. We're having to use more and more disposable items, which is not great, but times must. And as for the sandwiches, yet again, it's about offering good choices of sandwich fillings. So, you know, fresh cooked meats, cheeses, and hummus, just anything that's more nutritious rather than, in my opinion, pre-made sandwich fillings. But it is a very difficult one to maintain, and I'm sure Sam has more experience because of the amount that she's covered over this last 12 weeks.
Yeah, I think you know, looking at our menu, it's broadly compliant because we've still got hot vegetarian jacket potatoes, you know, and packed lunch options. So broadly compliant over, you know, I can sit down with my checklist and make sure that works. As for individual packed lunches, obviously that's always been an issue, and that's always been harder, which is why we've always tried to promote the hot meal, because you can get, your fruit and your veg and everything in, and your veggie loaded sauces. Same as Tony, really. We've made sure that we've got sandwiches or pasta salads with a variety of options and proteins. We've got fresh fruit in the packed lunch as well as dried fruit, so we've got a bit of choice in there. We've got yogurt for our dairy, goes into our packed lunch boxes. Veg sticks with sometimes a bit of hummus, obviously child friendly. It's carrot and cucumber to keep my cost down, but that's what children will eat, so we're happy with that. And if I've put peas and sweet corn in my pasta salad, that helps. And then they'll have a little cake and a sweet treat. So to be fair, price wise, our packed lunches are quite cost heavy, because of the amount of stuff we have to have in there to be compliant. But I think as a menu, we've managed to make sure that it's broadly compliant, really.
Great, thank you. And Jeanette, we've got a question on LACE's School Chef of the Year competition. Will that be going ahead this year?
Yes, apparently the Scotty is going ahead. Obviously, it depends on government advice. But I rang Stephen last week and asked him the question. So yes, it is going ahead.
Okay, great. And then I've got a question which you both sort of covered within your talks, but if you could just sort of put a number on it, how many choices have you got on offer for school lunch? The question comes from someone that's reduced the number of options that they're offering, but they're worried that children aren't getting enough choice. So I guess the question is more around, how do you make sure that there's still enough choice? I'll put that to
if
Sam.
I go first, Tony. Yeah, so we've still got 4 choices on our menu. So there's the variety. So we've got the hot lunch, we've got the vegetarian, and we've got the jacket potato option and the packed lunch. So we've got that, we've got 4 options on there. And to simplify my menu, because it's a takeaway option and we can't have children saying, "Oh, I don't want that, Mrs. Ward. I don't want peas and sweet corn. Or I don't," we've fixed the toppings or the fillings so that, once it's gone out in that pack up box, it's, it's got everything in it. That was the simplest way to do it. So we've simplified it on one aspect, but also still maintained the choice in another. So that's how I've done it anyway.
Yeah, and as for myself, we have put into operation a pre-ordering system for each hub or bubble, and we're still offering 3 choices. So the vegan, vegetarian, or a meat dish, and jacket potatoes. So, and of course, there's individual salads or vegetables with those. But with having the pre-order system, the student is actually ordering what they want, and it's helped to reduce waste as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a huge help. But I think that's good to have that rule of thumb of 3 to 4 choices. I think that's definitely going to be helpful to people. Jeanette, what have you heard about how dining rooms are being set out, if they're even in use?
Well, so I think most. Can I just go back actually, because
yeah, of course.
Sam was talking about the choices. Interestingly, from the suppliers and the producers, and this is where actually local producers can come in, but the other producers, and this is from James Bilby, and I'm just reading from here, product substitutions are an issue. Manufacturers have rationalised their product range, so fewer products are being produced for catering, for hospitality, because what they've done is they've converted into the retail section. Yeah. So they're making more for the retail than they are for the hospitality. And it mainly affects dairy and short life ambient, it's saying here. But that's, keep that in mind when you are ordering, because obviously, because there's not as many children in school, it's also having a knock-on effect to prices. So prices are rising. They're rising anyway, But as I say, that is an issue. So, you know, just sort of watch what, I would say watch what you're ordering. Short dated stock as well is an issue. You know, a lot of these big suppliers have got stock in from months ago. So when your stock comes in, you need to check that there's a reasonable amount of date on it. So I just wanted to say that. I think Tony and Sam for the dining rooms, I mean, obviously with me now not going out to schools, but what I do know is that the people that I've spoken to, a lot of them have said that they're in the classrooms, they're not in the dining rooms. You know, I mean, Sam alluded to it earlier. It's not a place where they can go because you cannot keep that 2 metre distance.
And also we found, Jeanette, that by opening up our dining room, the risk assessment involved in that with the flow, the sneeze screens, the 2 metre distance on tables, that social dining, it all felt not quite so right, that it was easier to deliver it to their bubbles so they had a bit more of a fun picnic, and it was like that. It seemed a lot nicer and a lot more palatable, if you want, that it wasn't like that. I think in September what we have decided to do is to carry on our takeaway model. So we're going to carry on doing that, but we might be able to have children, instead of the food being delivered to their bubbles, for children to come and collect from their hot boxes by class at a 2 metre distance in stages, in staggered lunchtime. So we might, you know, that's very slow progression to children coming back in and almost in their small bubbles of 8 queuing. You know, that's where we might go to. But yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, we've got the same issue, except rather than having anyone in the dining room, we've got a one-way system. So when they go into their bubbles, the food is delivered to them, and then we receive plates, cutlery back to the kitchen. Every classroom that they're actually in their bubbles have got external doors to the outside, so they can go and use the outside spaces at allocated times for each bubble, so that there isn't that connection of all the students being in one location at once. And as Sam says, come September, I really feel that our dining room will be still out of bounds, and we'll be using the bubbles and the one-way system for a long time. I expect it to be in place right up until December.
Yeah.
Going back to suppliers as well, can I just go back to suppliers? I've been really in contact really closely with our suppliers, and that is right, Jeanette. They've said a lot of manufacturing. So if you're buying products that have already been manufactured, that's where the supply chain breaks down a little bit, and that's where it's tricky to get some of those products. But if you've got locally sourced and you're making and preparing stuff, a lot of that is still fine. So I think ingredients like flour and things that still isn't an issue, and we've had confirmation from our suppliers that in September that will be okay. It was more on the manufactured products, because they've either furloughed staff or they've reduced manufacturing, where the issues are for us.
Great, that's useful. There's a question here actually that specifically mentions flour. So I've planned a menu for September, but I'm worried about getting the supplies I need, for example, flour. Has anyone else thought this far ahead? And is anyone getting ready-made foods just in case, for example, sponge mixes and frozen pastry?
Well, as Sam mentioned, on a local level, all our suppliers have been fantastic. And the only issue I've come across was when people were asking for 1.5 kilogram bags of flour. The 16 kilos, things like that, were very simple to get, but smaller bags would be more difficult. And yet again, with using sponge mixes and pre-mixed, that might be an issue, because of course they're doing them in large quantities, and if they haven't got them in stock, they'll soon the supply will soon dry up. So wherever possible, I'd be looking at trying to make everything fresh.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when we've spoken to our suppliers, a lot of them said, just as Jeanette said, all our wholesalers have had to go to a retail model to be able to survive for a while. So it's about them going back to a wholesale model. So we had a little bit of tweaks in supply for a while, but I couldn't get small packs of beans for my food parcels, but large 2.5 kilo tins were fine. So I think it's about working with your supplier really closely and to find out what they feel is a little bit of a shortage. I mean, Al said things which didn't apply to us, but things like flan cases were an issue because that was manufactured, whereas if I bought the flour and the butter to make my own flan case, that's fine, but anything that's manufactured, I think that's when, or actually being supplied from places like Italy, there might be delays in certain brands of peas or frozen veg. They said there might be slight delays in things like that if it was coming from Italy. But I think it's about that constant communication with your supplier is really important.
Great, that's really useful to know, I think. And sort of on a similar vein with suppliers, what's the best way of dealing with deliveries? So is it up to the suppliers to ensure that the food is safe, or is that something that you're taking on yourselves in the kitchens?
For myself, I've basically taken it on myself, and part of our risk assessment was our suppliers would stop at the back door of the kitchen. Everything would be loaded onto a trolley. Any external packaging would be disposed of. Any packets or tubs would be sanitized before going onto the shelf. And we've done that with all our supplies, just mainly for the reassurance of the staff and to make sure that they know that we are trying our best to reduce any risk coming into the kitchen, coming into the school. And our suppliers and our delivery men have been really, really helpful and accept what we're trying to do. And as Sam says, if you've got a really good working relationship with your suppliers, they will support you no matter what you put in place.
Yeah, ours are exactly the same, Tony. The only thing on our risk assessment that we've got additional is that we don't wear gloves in the kitchen because I like to see hand washing done effectively, constantly. But we do wear gloves to take in deliveries. So there is that element of a little bit of PPE on just deliveries. And our delivery drivers have actually started to wear masks and gloves when they put stuff onto the kitchen entrance. So they're not allowed in. We have our own pen to sign. We don't share pens like we normally do, or try to nab those, because that's great. I always love a pen. But we're really careful about those little details in that process that probably we wouldn't normally do. But it's very similar. We've got our own, but our suppliers have got their own procedures in place as well that they've given us like a checklist that they've gone through, which was really handy.
Yeah, did they communicate that to you, Sam, before you sort of went
I asked for it. Yeah, I asked for it purposely because when I was doing my risk assessment, I thought it would be quite a nice idea to see what they had in place first, which would help me facilitate my risk assessment. But so I sort of magpied a few bits so that I could add it to mine. But they offered it very freely. They already had that in place. They're big, companies. They're, quite ahead of the game, and then I could just add ours in so that we had a two-pronged approach, really.
Yeah, brilliant. And Jeanette, do you know anything about environmental health officers? Are they still doing inspections at the moment?
Yes, they are. They won't be allowed in to the kitchen, but they will be, apparently. Again, I asked. I found one or two people, and they basically said make sure, and Sam and Tony have done this, and I'm assuming that everybody else will, make sure that all your risk assessments are in place, your COVID-19 checklist, and that's either ours, and I have to say at this time, Sam and Tony, they both contributed to this checklist, which is, it's absolutely brilliant. And in this checklist, it does say, update your HACCP or your COSH protocols and check in with your environmental health officer. And we recommend a kitchen-specific risk assessment for managing the risk of COVID-19 infection. If you've got all of that in place, your environmental health officer will be more than happy. But you've got to have that in place.
Yeah, I agree, Jeanette.
One of the other places that you can look at, which will be helpful, is the food standard agencies. They have done a PDF of what to be looking for when reopening a catering business, and there's awful lot of information on that you can download and check off if you're meeting what they're asking for, because of course they're working hand in hand with local EHOs.
Yeah, our local environmental health, they asked for my updated HACCP, and obviously we went through and updated our COSH because we're using hand sanitizers at certain times. So, just making sure you've added all those extra bits. The school will have their own risk assessment. They've had to update their, safety data sheets as well for, enhanced cleaning in their classrooms. But it was just about us going through our check, making sure that we had everything up to date. And we feel quite confident everything's fine.
Great. And just to, sorry, on Jeanette's note from earlier, the Food for Life school food checklist for COVID-19, that is available on our website, but I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to email that out directly to everyone on the webinar. So we'll send the link out for that. And as well, we'll maybe include the link for the FSA document that you mentioned, Tony, as well, if that's going to be useful for people. And just a couple of questions on sort of staffing. So someone says that they're okay for now, but they'd really struggle for staff if numbers go up, as a number of their team are already self-isolating or shielding. What's the advice for arranging cover?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Yeah, it's a really tricky one. And I think at that time, for me, if that happened in my kitchens at that time, I would think about maybe simplifying your menu further if that's what you had to do, because you just have to do what's necessary to make sure that you're going to get through. We did have staff. So with our takeaway model, what we found is I've adapted their rotas and their hours, because once we've delivered that food to the bubble, there's no washing up or cleaning. The girls are loving it, to be fair. There's so actually I don't need the hours. They don't need to finish at 2:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I've juggled their hours. So maybe even the member of staff that comes in to do and cover that cleaning aspect, I would condense her hours so that maybe then she could batch make cakes for the week or batch make stuff for the week. So I would sort of juggle my rota to be able to cope, so that and simplify my menu. At the end of the day, you have to do what it's not ideal. It's not what we'd want to do. It's not what we're used to do. But we're not in ideal circumstances, are we? And if it means you have to buy in meatballs rather than make them yourself, so that one member of staff can deliver that service, that's what you have to do. That's it.
Yeah, I fully endorse what Sam's just said. We had one member of staff that is shielding, and that member of staff happened to be the cook at one of our primary schools. So that was why we had to look at, rather than offering a hot meal choice, it was a packed meal choice. And extraordinary times, we just have to work with what we've got.
Yeah, I think as long as you've got... go on, sorry. Go on.
I think What you said, Sam, was absolutely spot on. We are living in unprecedented times, and to bring another member from wherever into a kitchen at the moment is a big no-no, because the rest of the staff won't feel safe. Maybe, you know, the teaching staff wouldn't feel safe if that person has not been a regular team member. So, as Sam said, the best thing to look at would be reduce the menu.
Yeah. I think as long as you've thought things through, and the fact that you're thinking through, you know, from the question, you're thinking through those scenarios, and even, you know, we worry about everything. So the fact that you've even worried about that and thought that through means that you've sort of thought through a contingency. And I think, you know, as long as you try and think about every possibility, you know, if one of my kitchens went down, I would probably get the girls in another school to make it up, and we'll get it transported over to that school. You know, we're so flexible and adaptable. We find a way, but don't be hard on yourself, because we're not in a time where you have to, you know, be juggling plates all the time. You know, if it helps to simplify a menu or to change rotas and hours and condense, you know, that's what you have to do. You know, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I think that's really useful to hear, and probably quite empowering for some people as well, to know that other people are in the same boat. One for you, Jeanette, and obviously, you know, quite relevant because of the news in the last couple of days. But I've heard some reports of the government being pushed to provide food for free school meals over the summer holiday. Where does this leave us, and will we have to work?
Oh, wow. The honest answer is I haven't got a clue. DOV have not sent out anything yet. Apparently, Gavin Williamson is working on it. Will Shaw, who was the Ofsted inspector who's retired, is talking about summer schools. And so what's going to happen? Not quite sure. At the moment, they are all talking about this 120 million, which is going to be spent on vouchers. And so during that 6 weeks, families will get vouchers to the tune of £15 per child, which is will total 120 million. And that's as much as I know at the moment.
I've had actually a lot of staff members ask me, because they're only paid for 38 weeks a year. And so, you know, all of those considerations about their contractual obligations. If they do have to open up as a summer school, and they've got, maybe it's just a catch up of 1 day a week. We know as caterers, if you open a tin of tuna, you've got a couple of days to use that up. If you're only talking about 1 day a week food provision, that's going to have a huge on cost, you know, for just, you know, having that as a 1 day operation, you know, or so there's so many questions I think all of us have. And I think, you know, like through the whole of this crisis, we've just had to all pull together and support each other and share that info that we have and work through it step by step. And whatever happens, we will get through it, won't we? You know, we will do what we can. But it is a really unsettling time for people. I think admin staff were really happy to know that they could bulk order the vouchers for a 6-week block. So because a lot of our admin were worried about coming in and having to do that on a weekly basis, but apparently you can order the vouchers for a whole 6-week block at the beginning of the summer. So, you know, that's something. But yeah, watch this space.
Great. And then I've just got one last question here, unless there's anything that's going to come through on the chat. And I'll put this to Jeanette, but it would be great if Sam and Tony, you could input too. Is there a forum for school caterers so that they can compare notes on practices and menus, etc.?
Of course there is. Jeanette,
Go on, Tony. I'll let you start.
Yeah, it's the Facebook Food for Life COVID support group. And I presume anyone can sign up to it.
Yeah, they can, yeah.
And if you want any help or support, it's there. If you want to have a little dig at Jeanette, She enjoys a good laugh on a Friday evening.
Thanks, Tony.
But yeah, as Sam has mentioned and Jeanette on numerous occasions, the whole thing about school cooks is being able to help, support, and give guidance if need be. And if you're willing to share what you know and what you're doing, it just takes some of the pressure off, knowing that there's people out there that can give you an answer. And of course, with most people being on Facebook, you can have an answer very quickly. So,
yeah. And if you want, Tony, to if you want to send in something in private, then we will answer privately. That's not a problem.
Of course, there is that option as well. So someone like myself that isn't great with technology and all the things that go on, I'll just ask it straight out or put it out there for people to think about.
I think that's right, Tony. I think, and Jeanette said, and, to be fair, the reason why we're here is because Jeanette shares everything with us. And the fact that actually, we're all better together, great minds think alike, and we're all, able to bounce ideas, and everybody has a different model, and it doesn't make anybody right or wrong. And the fact that we all can all bounce those ideas around to make our own service better is helpful, isn't it?
And you can take those ideas, you can make, I've always said, you take those ideas, you make them your own, and what works in one school maybe not work, it won't work in yours. But if you get a few ideas, one of those will. And the one thing that I think I want to say before we go is that the catering service, the school meal catering service, has never ever not delivered. Never. And so it's a unique set of people. So again, I just want to say thank you. I can't see anybody. I don't like doing this because I can't see you all. But we are here for you. We are here for you. And I want to make that very, very plain.
Yeah, thank you, Jeanette. Thanks, Sam and Tony. That is really nice to hear, and I would really recommend for anyone to go and take a look at the Facebook group, because it's, if anything, a good giggle to see what Jeanette and Tony have been posting that week. But there are some really relevant questions on there, and it is good to just share, your concerns, thoughts, and just telling other people what you're up to, just so you can see, get some reassurance on if what you're doing is correct, or is what other people are interpreting as the guidance as well. So we can share through that link for anyone that's not already signed up to the Facebook group. We'll share that along with the food standards information and the COVID-19 school food advice checklist. Thank you all so much for taking part. There'll be a short feedback questionnaire that will pop up at the end of the webinar. So please do take some time to fill that in, because it's really good for us to get feedback on sessions like this, to know if this is what's useful for you, and this is the right forum and the right time for us to share this learning and best practice. So please just do take the time to do that. It should only take a couple of minutes. And big thank you to Jeanette Orrey, Sam Ward and Tony Mulgrew for taking part. We really, really appreciate your time.
Been a pleasure.
Thanks, Pleasure.